Before I tell you anything, just know this. The moment I saw my boyfriend making out with my best friend in a resort pool on Instagram, I didn't break. Something inside me sharpened. It felt like the universe had slapped me awake, whispering, "You were never the fool, just surrounded by people who thought you were too kind to see the truth." And that truth? It hit harder than betrayal ever could. 3 weeks ago, Brian walked into my apartment where he'd been living rent-free for a year, and announced he needed space. He said he was overwhelmed, stressed about work, unsure about us, and needed a few weeks to clear his head. I asked him directly, calmly, if this was a breakup. He swore it wasn't. Told me he loved me, he just needed time alone. Claimed he'd be staying at his brother Steven's place and wanted minimal contact while he sorted his feelings out. Fine. I wasn't about to cling to a man who already had one foot out the door. I told him to take all the space he needed. He packed a bag, left, and I forced myself to keep living my life. Yeah, it hurt. But I refused to crumble over someone who couldn't communicate like a grown adult. And during all of this, guess who was right by my side? Emily, my best friend for 6 years. She showed up that night with wine, telling me Brian was just panicking about commitment and would come around. She checked on me every day, invited me out, listened to every detail of my relationship, the arguments, my worries, the private fears I only ever shared with her. She held all my vulnerabilities in her hands like a trusted friend. Except she wasn't one, not even close. 2 Fridays ago, I was at work on my lunch break, mindlessly scrolling Instagram. Emily's story popped up. Pretty sunset, nothing unusual. Then I swiped. And that's when my world stopped. Brian, in a resort pool, Emily's arm around him. Next slide, they were kissing. Full, smug, unapologetic makeout session. Caption: "Sometimes the best things are unexpected." Heart emojis. I must have made some kind of face because my coworker Maggie gasped when she saw my screen. But instead of crying or falling apart, something in me turned ice cold. I got angry. I called Emily, straight to voicemail. Called again, voicemail, texted her, nothing. Meanwhile, she kept posting story after story like betrayal was a vacation theme. Swim-up bar, beach walks, romantic dinners, not a single response to me. Brian? Same thing. Voicemail. I finished my entire shift like nothing happened because I refused to let them see me break. When I got home, I opened their profiles like I was analyzing crime scene evidence, and suddenly every missed clue was glaring at me. Brian's old comments on Emily's gym selfies, her photos posted near his office, flirty little exchanges I'd brushed off. They had been warming up this betrayal for months, right under my nose. I called my sister Josie, and she damn near offered to commit a felony. I told her to relax because I wasn't spiraling, I was planning. That entire weekend, they paraded their new relationship online like a badge of honor. Couples massages, ocean views, candlelit dinners. Meanwhile, both ignored every call and message I sent. Not that I wanted answers anymore. I wanted clarity, and I got it. Monday, I walked into work composed. No tears, no breakdowns, just focus. If they wanted to humiliate me publicly, fine. They could have that moment. I was already preparing mine. By Tuesday, I drove past Steven's place on a hunch. No car. Of course not. He wasn't seeking space. He was seeking Emily. Wednesday afternoon, Emily finally called me. Her voice was soft, apologetic, fake. She said things just happened, that she and Brian had been talking for months and developed feelings. She said it like she was describing a mild inconvenience, not blowing up 2 relationships at once. She explained how they couldn't fight it anymore, how Brian had been unhappy with me for almost a year, how she hoped I'd eventually be happy for them. Then she said the sentence that made my vision blur with rage. "Your relationship was basically over anyway. I'm doing you a favor." I laughed in disbelief. Then I asked one question. "How long has this been going on?" "Months," she admitted. All while pretending to support me. All while collecting my secrets. I hung up on her and called Brian next. He answered, voice strangely calm, launching into a rehearsed speech about how feelings just grow. He said he and Emily fit in ways we never did. When I asked if he'd used my best friend as a pipeline for information about me, he hesitated, then admitted Emily had shared everything, every fight, every insecurity, every private thought. He weaponized my own words. I told him we were done and he would never step foot in my apartment again. He begged for an in-person talk. I said absolutely not. Everything in me snapped into this razor-sharp calm, the kind that shows up when you stop being hurt and start becoming dangerously clear-headed. I walked through my apartment with a trash bag and a purpose. Every trace of Brian, gone. His clothes, his shoes, his sentimental knickknacks he swore he couldn't live without, the hoodie I once slept in, all boxed up. I called his brother Stephen and told him he had until Friday to pick it up, or it was going straight into the dumpster. Stephen sounded genuinely shocked. He'd believed Brian was staying with him, dealing with relationship stuff. Turns out even he wasn't important enough for the truth. That actually made me laugh. That week, I rebuilt my space like I was rebuilding myself. I deep cleaned the living room, rearranged furniture, replaced pillows, scrubbed the scent of him out of everything. By Sunday, my apartment didn't look like a battlefield anymore. It looked like a fresh start. Meanwhile, the Florida lovebirds were still posting like they were starring in a budget romance movie. Couples dinners, beach sunsets, her sitting on his lap, him kissing her cheek. They acted like the universe had blessed their union instead of exposing them. And our mutual friends? Half were horrified. The rest just commented heart eyes emojis like traitors. I didn't argue or explain. I quietly unfollowed anyone who showed support to them. If you cheer on my humiliation, you don't get access to me. My mom called after hearing the story from Josie. She was ready to drive down herself, armed with cookies and emotional weapons. I told her I was fine, and the strange thing was, I meant it. Anger had replaced heartbreak, and anger, when used correctly, is clarifying. Brian and Emily kept posting soft launch couple content, restaurants we used to go to, places Emily once claimed she hated, even using the same captions Brian and I used to joke about. It was pathetic, honestly, like they were trying to rewrite my past as their own. But I stayed quiet because I was watching and planning. Here's the thing cheaters never understand. When you betray someone who stayed loyal, you didn't just lose them. You lost their silence. You lost their protection. You lost the version of them that would have defended you. And I had information that would burn both of them to ash. Emily had a history, a pattern. She wasn't just an occasional cheater. She was a serial one. She once cried on my couch telling me she wished she could be faithful, like cheating was a personality trait she couldn't fix. She cheated on her ex Jason 3 times. 3. And I was the idiot wiping her tears afterward. Brian? He was no prize either. Jealous, controlling, deeply insecure. The kind of guy who goes through your phone just in case. I spent years managing his paranoia like it was a full-time job. Emily had no idea who she'd attached herself to. Their honeymoon phase had an expiration date, and the countdown had already started. Friday night came, 2 weeks after Poolgate, and as I watched Emily's story of them at a party with mutual friends, I took a screenshot, then another and another. I opened a folder on my laptop I'd been building quietly, piece by piece. Social media posts, flirty comments from months ago, screenshots of Emily admitting her cheating habits, timestamps. Evidence, not for revenge, for justice, for strategy, because truth has weight, and I was going to drop it on them at the perfect moment. I opened my notes app and wrote down everything I knew about their weaknesses, their habits, their patterns, Emily's boredom, Brian's jealousy, the exact fault lines that would split them apart. And then I remembered Jason, Emily's ex, the one she cheated on repeatedly, the one she once claimed was boring and too good for her drama. I found him on Instagram easily, thanks to old tagged photos. He seemed normal, grounded, stable. And according to Emily's drunken confessions years ago, he lived nearby again. I smiled. If Emily thought she could shatter my life and walk away clean, she was about to learn that some people have consequences waiting for them. The next morning, the universe handed me a gift wrapped in karmic gold. I went to Target for laundry detergent, and, right beside the cleaning aisle, I ran straight into Brian and Emily. It was almost laughable how fate delivered them to me. Emily clung to his arm like she expected me to lunge at them. Brian actually smirked like he'd won something. He pulled her closer, kissed her cheek while staring straight at me, trying to get a reaction. Emily giggled, smug and glittery with self-importance. Then Brian said, "Wow, didn't expect to see you here. You doing okay?" In the fakest, most patronizing voice a human has ever produced. I told them I was fantastic. Emily chimed in sweetly, telling me she hoped there were no hard feelings because they were simply following their hearts and hoped I could be mature. Brian nodded along, adding that I should focus on finding my own happiness instead of dwelling on the past, like he hadn't detonated.
My life 3 weeks earlier. I smiled, wished them happiness, and walked away. They wanted drama, a reaction, tears. They got none. 2 days later, Emily strutted into the pharmacy where I worked. She ignored every other open register and came straight to mine. She wanted a front row seat to her own victory. She acted friendly at first, asking how I'd been. Then she leaned in and whispered that Brian was even better than she expected, and maybe if I'd kept him interested, he wouldn't have looked elsewhere. I handed her prescription back with a smile, so calm it confused her. She left thinking she'd won something. She had no idea the ground under her feet was already cracking. That night, I finalized my plan. I contacted Jason, Emily's ex, who knew her cheating tendencies better than anyone. He'd been ignoring her recent messages, but he agreed to meet me. When I told him the truth about Brian and Emily, he wasn't even surprised. He said, "Yeah, that's Emily." Then he showed me the texts she'd been sending him since coming back from Florida. She had started breadcrumbing him again almost immediately, just like she'd done to every man before him. That's when I laid out my plan. Let Emily act on her impulses, record everything, and let Brian witness exactly who he left me for. Jason hesitated, asked if I was really sure. I told him Emily deserved the truth to catch up with her. The next day he texted. He was in. They met Thursday. She flirted within minutes. She suggested going back to his place. She kissed him first. Jason recorded everything just like we planned. When he sent me the video later that night, I watched the first 5 seconds and didn't even need the rest. The evidence was crystal clear. I waited for the perfect moment to strike. It arrived faster than I expected. Tuesday morning when Emily posted a long Instagram caption about finding your soulmate with a picture of her and Brian at dinner. The comments flooded in, calling them relationship goals. I smiled. I made a burner Instagram account and sent Brian the video with the message, "Thought you should know who you're dating. This was last night." Then I sent the same video to Emily with, "Brian is about to see this. Good luck." By noon, my phone was melting. Brian called 11 times. Emily called more. Their messages shifted from confusion to panic to pure meltdown within hours. I didn't respond to a single one. Brian's voicemail started calm, then spiraled. He confronted Emily. She admitted everything. He cried. He begged. He said he'd made the biggest mistake of his life. He said Emily had used him. He said he missed me. He said he needed me. I listened to every voicemail in silence, then deleted them. Emily's messages were even more pathetic. First insults, then victimhood, then apologies, then blaming me, then begging. I sent her one message back. "You ruined your own relationship. I didn't make you cheat." Then I blocked her. Friday morning, Brian showed up at my door, pounding like his life depended on it. He looked broken, eyes red, voice shaking. He said he'd ended things with Emily. He said he never meant to hurt me. He said he'd been manipulated. He said he loved me. He asked for another chance. I looked at him. This man I once would have done anything for and felt absolutely nothing. I told him the truth. He didn't lose me because of Emily. He lost me the moment he chose to betray me. He begged. He cried. I shut the door in his face. By Saturday, I was having lunch with Josie, shopping, living my life again. It felt lighter, cleaner, like the end of a storm you never thought would break. Jason texted later saying Emily was already blowing up his phone again, spinning new lies now that her world had collapsed. And then, like a cherry on top, Brian messaged me from a burner account saying he was moving in with Steven permanently because he couldn't stand being in a town full of reminders of his mistakes. I blocked him, too. The final twist came when I ran into Emily's friend, Deborah. I expected judgment, but instead she sighed and said she was relieved someone finally exposed Emily's pattern, that she'd been ruining relationships for years and nobody had ever held her accountable.